Welcome to the Return on Life podcast, where we discuss all things financial and freedom through the game of real estate, focusing on building a fulfilling and purpose-driven life. Welcome back, everyone. I am Randy Dyck, and this is the Return on Life podcast, where it's not always about making money, but it's about getting the most out of life, the ROL, the Return on Life. And today I've got a guest that I think is going to really inspire every one of you about the return on life. I met this individual at a studio, a local studio here in White Rock, BC called Blue Frog Studio, where I love to go and listen to live music. And here was this individual, and I just had to have him on my podcast after listening to his amazing music. It's none other than Eliot Lewis. Eliot Lewis. And Elliot has been in the music industry for well over 30 plus years, kind of like me in real estate. But he's played with some of the biggest bands, including Hall Oates, for well over 2 decades. And of course, he's on live with Daryl's house as well. And so just so honored to have you here, Elliot. Thank you for joining me on the Return Life podcast.
Oh, great to be with you, Randy. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, I'm going to actually have to pump up this Blue Frog studio a little bit. Is the sound one of the best studios you've ever played in?
It was fantastic. The whole experience. I mean, the sound was amazing. It's funny because I had done a show the night before and the sound wasn't quite of that standard. So you never know what you're going to get when you're a traveling musician and you're relying on other people to do your sound. So when I got to the Blue Frog Studios, I could breathe a breath of fresh air because the sound was impeccable. I think the visuals and the setting and everything about that show was just top notch for me.
Yeah. And for those that were not there, which I don't think any of you were there, what Elliot did was played an entire band by himself. Maybe explain how you do that, because that was remarkable, from everything from drums to bass to keyboards to guitar and vocals, of course. How do you do that?
Well, the presentation is called live looping, and it's a term that musicians use typically. It's another word for recording. I'm using some hardware, some foot pedals and stuff to record everything on the moment. So in my show, there's nothing pre-recorded. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I spent years as a drummer and then a bass player and then, of course, a keyboard player in Hall Oates. So, this kind of a show was a way for me to put it all together and basically present this multi-instrumental show. And it's a lot of work, but I love it because it's so spontaneous. It really is the closest thing to playing in a band, because I'm improvising with myself the whole night and I never know where it's going to go. I have an idea of what I'm going to play, but depending on the audience's energy and what the demographic may be and what I think they may be feeling, I can change it on the spot. So that part of it's really fun for me.
That's cool. As a speaker, I certainly can understand when you say the energy of the audience or the crowd.
Yeah.
And you live and breathe the energy of the crowd. I'm sure you've been in some amazing venues and concerts where it's gone right off the chain, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And in those venues, I've been so blessed because I have played, literally every venue a musician could ever dream of. I mean, my pinnacle and my biggest thrill in my life was playing Madison Square Garden in New York. And, I went there as a little kid, never thinking I would ever play there. And I played there 3 times, as well as every other amazing venue around the world. So, but you never know where that energy is going to emanate from. Sometimes it's the big places, but a lot of times it's these small, intimate places, like the Blue Frog was a great example. I love the fact that I can see everybody and everybody is within a certain radius and I feel like I can connect with that energy. So, I love the smaller, intimate places.
Yeah, I guess, there's challenges in every venue, I'm sure, but you can probably mitigate some of the challenges in a smaller venue because you can make it more personal. in a
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. And as you probably witnessed, I like to get into the crowd. I'm wireless my guitar and really just have fun with the night, and just make it hopefully a memorable experience.
Yeah, I wanted to reach out and just touch your guitar, but I was a little bit out of length to do that. Um, when you're now doing solo,
Yeah.
you're a solo artist. Was that a hard transition for you, or was that just a natural progression? Because in business, a lot of people find it difficult to transition or change lanes, so to
hmm
speak. Was that difficult or easy for you to do?
It was very, very easy and natural because I have been sort of operating as a solo artist through my whole career, playing with other bands and other artists. In the Average White Band, I started putting out my own CDs, my own music, way back in whatever it was, '89. But the goal for me from day one was always to be an artist. It wasn't just to be a
Mhm.
musician, to play music. It was always to convey music and write music. So I've been operating as a solo artist my whole career, and now I'm full-time solo artist and loving it.
Hmm. So you played with the Average White Band. That was
Yeah,
for about 13 years you're sharing with me earlier.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
And how
Uh,
did how did this whole thing thing, the career into music happen? Because I mean, growing up, we all have
yeah.
visions of being, you know, playing in the Stanley Cup finals or, throwing the last ball in the Super Bowl game or whatever it may be.
hmm
How did you end up in music?
That's a great question, and I feel like I was very, very lucky to have discovered this so early on in my life. Probably a very typical scenario is I was around a lot of music as a kid growing up. My mom was a classical pianist and
Hmm.
teacher, and two older brothers. I'm the youngest of three, and one of them is and was a great, great, great guitar player. So he was introducing myself and the middle brother to all this great music back in the day, in the early '70s. And so there was a real melting pot of music. And so at 10 years old, I discovered the drums. Basically, what happened is I think my parents gave my brother a drum kit that it was only meant to be played for probably a week before it fell apart, and he didn't take to it, but I did. And so I discovered at 10 years old what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And my journey is pretty interesting because it just unfolded in such an incredible way. I ended up meeting a young kid at school when I was in elementary school, and he was just starting the bass, and I was just starting drums. But his father was in the music business, and
Hmm.
subsequently introduced me and his son to so many people. I mean, I was meeting Elton John and seeing The Who and jamming with Peter Frampton when I was just a teenager. So I was exposed to all this stuff very early on, and it really, really fueled my fire to do this for a living and do it for my life. And then I had, like any business, um, a lot of it is your determination, your desire, how much passion you want to put into this. But then some of it is mixed with relationships, who you meet along the way. So it was a
Hmm.
combination of being prepared, loving this thing called music, and then having some opportunities. So it all kind of, rolled into this amazing career that I can't even believe I've been a part of.
Yeah, sometimes it goes by so quickly. And
Yeah.
again, I have to think of myself, 33 years in the real estate space, and it's
Yeah.
gone by so quickly. I hardly think, wow, I just got into
What
this.
happened?
What
Yeah.
happened? Especially
Yeah.
when it goes well. When you're in a with great people and great spaces and doing great things, and it's your passion, it just doesn't feel like work. And I
Yeah.
sense that's how you feel as well.
Well, that's exactly it. Yes, the business side of it is work, of course. But when you love what you do, then it feels like a different sort of work.
Hmm.
I'm still lucky enough that I can tap into the sort of spark that I had when I was a kid, when I was just discovering all this stuff. And I think that's really important as we mature and get older. Sometimes some people can lose that spark and that sort of, passion.
Yes.
But I try to tap into it all the time. That keeps me moving forward.
Hey, Ellie, a lot of times we're starstruck with people,
Mm,
and it holds us back because we're like just so starstruck. Here we are
yeah.
meeting, the stars of the music industry, playing and jamming with them. Were you starstruck, or were you just too young to really understand like how big of this a moment that was, or how did that
Yeah.
play out?
No, I think I was starstruck, and I was impressed and excited. It was all of that. Um, and so I really appreciate anytime anybody, I don't think anybody comes up to me being starstruck, but they may have seen me, like, for instance, on Daryl's show, Live from Daryl's House, with all these incredible, very, very famous people. So they feel like they know you somewhat. So if somebody comes up to me and wants an autograph, I get that. I understand it because I was a kid and wanted that of the people that I was going to see. So it's a natural, natural evolution.
Well,
Nothing wrong with it.
I'm starstruck. I'm starstruck right now. And I didn't get an autograph from you either the other night. Oh, gee.
Well, I'm coming back, so
Okay.
we'll do it again.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about the underdog. But hey, if you're enjoying this as a listener, hit the subscribe button. There's more to come. And of course, we always have incredible guests from all different walks of life. So hit the subscribe button now and enjoy more of these amazing podcasts. Well, Elliot, as you know, I'm writing a book on the underdog DNA, and I believe that we all have the underdog within us at some level, and some of us more so than
Hmm.
others, and we
Hmm.
tap into that. But when you hear underdog, do you have moments that you think you go back and you go, yeah, that was an underdog experience for me, and if I didn't dig deep, and we might all call it something else, but it's about finding ourselves and digging deep and bringing the best of ourselves out. Do you have a moment that you can share with us?
I can tell you, yeah, it's a great question and a great topic. I don't think I've really ever touched on it before. But the thing that I think of immediately when you said underdog was, and I'm dating myself, but that's okay because it's part of my life, is when I was a kid, I was one of millions of kids that was incredibly inspired by Bruce Lee.
Mm,
Now, Bruce Lee inspired so many people. And the feeling that I got from that whole moment in time with him coming onto the scene was that he was definitely the underdog. And as a little kid, going to a theater to see him was so inspiring because I had never experienced people in the theater jumping up out of their seats and like going, yeah, just like rooting for this guy because he was Asian. And it was very unusual to see an Asian actor becoming this successful. He was an underdog. And
right.
that's definitely resonated with me. Growing up, I just felt like, why people become successful. They become presidents, they become CEOs, they have their own businesses. And I just thought, well, music is what I want to do. Why not me? So there was this feeling that, yeah, I'm an underdog. I don't really know what it takes to get to that place, but why not? If I just believe in myself and believe in this thing and work hard enough at it, I think that's my motto in life is anything is possible. It's the name of my latest CD. It's a theme that's been going through my whole life. So I think there is some underdog current in what I've done, and that's unfolded in my career for sure.
Hmm. There's a great song that you have called Legacy,
Mm.
Legacy, and you played it. And
Yeah.
I'm all about legacy myself, creating legacy in the world, legacy in my family, passing that on time and time again. And it's really, I think, also the spirit of the underdog. An underdog is very humble in most cases and knows that everything that it took for him to or her to get to a position often was through hard work, humbleness, but they want to pass that on
Hmm.
often. Share a little bit about your song Legacy, because it touched me when you played that for us at the Blue Frog.
Hmm. Thank you. It's just a concept that came to me. I tend to like writing about different topics, not the usual, always romantic. A lot of my messages are very optimistic because they're a reflection of my life and my journey. But I just have this feeling of, what are we all going to leave behind? And for everybody, it's going to be something different. But we're all ultimately going to leave something behind, whether it's our children, and I'm not a parent, but I think for people that do have children, it's going to be their children and their children's children and their family's legacy. And for people like myself that are an artist, it's hopefully going to be our art, our music, and maybe how we affected, hopefully positively, people in our lives. So I think everybody's going to have this different legacy, and it's just a song to make us think about what that might be.
I love that. Thanks for that share.
Yeah.
There's success, and we all want success, and you've had great success. But I think there's also a point when you get to the point where it's not about success so much, but as far as succession, what are you leaving behind? And of course, you get to leave your music behind that just lasts forever and ever and ever, which is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Because
it is a real tangible thing. It is a tangible thing that you're leaving behind. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And music affects so many people in such a strong way. I know it has in my life. I think it's such a powerful tool. And I always say this, I wrote one song about how music can bring you right back to a time and place in your life. Literally sometimes a day, in a moment, and you can smell things and hear things that are triggered from that song. I just think that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Yeah. Happens to me all the time, almost on a daily basis. I hear a song and I'm taken somewhere else, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I just so appreciate music. I wish I love music. I wish God gave me a little bit more gifting into the music side of who I am. But, it is what it is. I've got other gifts as well.
We all do. We all have different gifts.
Yes. So speaking of gifts, what advice would you give an emerging artist thinking about the underdog and gifting and all that? What kind of advice would you give an emerging artist?
Well, I think it may all sound cliche, but I think it is true because the music business is so different now. It would be a little daunting to be starting out now, but I would say ultimately you have to stay true to yourself. I would say, and I know that sounds cliche, but unless people are really, really believing in what you're doing, I don't think you can really fake it. And I do wish, there's a sort of there's a trend that's going on right now, especially in the music business, where there's a lot of tribute bands, as you probably know. I don't know how many you have there, but here there are, oh my God, there's a tribute for everybody.
Yes.
And I just think it's important to support new, upcoming, and original artists. People that I was inspired by that made such an impact on my life were like David Bowie, Todd Rundgren. They were really trailblazers. And so I think it's important to try to support artists that are, going to have that impact. But it's all the tried and true methods. It's hard work, it's passion, it's believing in yourself, and staying true to what you love.
Yeah. That's interesting. Tribute bands, I do see a rise of tribute bands everywhere, and they're very good. Mm-hmm. But we're not hearing new music. We're not understanding
exactly
a new voice, a new trend, or whatever it may be. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. And sticking true to yourself is so important in anything in life.
In anything. Yeah, because ultimately it's going to affect your happiness and your passion for it. Yeah.
If you could go back and give yourself a little nudge or a message to yourself as the young artist, the youngest artist, at 10, oh my goodness, 10 years old, what would you have done? Would you have done anything different, or you just played out the way it is today?
I don't know. I might tell myself not to maybe be so stubborn, because when I got something in my head as a kid, no way you could talk me out of it. But that probably it's a blessing and a curse,
It
because
is.
sometimes it makes you more rigid, but at the same time, it makes you feel like you can do anything. Um, so now, having grown, I definitely like to hear other people's opinions and
Mm.
their ideas and take it in and now really absorb everything more. But when I was young, it was like I have all the answers. But we know in life we really don't have all the answers.
True. The more we know, the less we know often.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, everybody listening, if you're enjoying this, please hit the subscribe button. We would love to have you as a regular here at the Return of Life podcast. We're going
Yeah.
to shift gears a little bit here with Elliot. We're going to move into some mindset and, hey, even some business stuff. Talking with a musician here about business. I'm really excited about this. And so Elliot, at the age of 10, is already saying, this is my lane. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Um, how, what did your parents think of you, or did they not care? Or it was just, yeah, just chase your dreams, chase it, chase it, chase it, go for it.
Fortunately, they they just let me do what I wanted to do. And
Mm.
I think that's partly because I was the youngest of three. So my oldest brother, they were talking about the late 60s here. He got a lot of discipline, a slightly more conservative father and a kid who just wanted to kind of rebel and do whatever he wanted to do. So he got some discipline. But by the time I grew up, I think my parents were basically like, you can do whatever you wanted to do. But they also supported me. They definitely saw something in what I was doing, and
Mm.
they they nurtured it. I think I learned a lot of my work ethic from actually both of my parents. My dad was a really hard worker. He was in construction,
Hmm.
but my mom, like I said, was a classical pianist. And I would, from my earliest memories, watch her play and practice a piece of classical music for months and months and months on end to try to perfect this thing. So that I was like, oh, that's how you do it. If you practice this thing, it will get better and you'll get better. And so that got into my psyche.
That is really interesting, and I
It
don't,
hit me really young. It hit me really young.
yeah, and I think that that's such a great lesson in business. You just have to do it over and over again. You have to like
Yeah.
get good at it. I know uh, uh, this incredible pianist teacher as well out of Calgary, Alberta, and she has such an incredible track record of creating these incredible pianists from students, young students. And I go, what is
Hmm.
the secret? And she says, it's not the child. I go, what do you mean it's not the child? Doesn't the child have to have gifts? Well,
Hmm.
some, but it's
Hmm.
the parent. It's the
Hmm.
parent that is the difference maker, she said. And it's how
Hmm.
the parent looks at this and makes sure that the child stays on task and on track and doing it
Hmm.
over and over again. It was quite remarkable. And you're just sharing that with me now, that watching your mother just continuously practice to make perfection
Yeah.
was
It
instilled in you.
definitely has a lot to do with your support team, your network, your
Hmm.
parents, your family, your friends. And for me it just all lined up
Yeah.
because I had this one friend growing up whose father was introducing us to all these incredible concerts and musicians, and then I had my parents and I had that element going. So it was a perfect, and then I was pretty much left to just do whatever I wanted. And that can be a dangerous thing. I think you should have some guidance and some sort of discipline. But I think in some ways I got lucky and just stayed hopefully on the right lane. Because
Well,
I was determined from a very young age to make this work.
yeah, that is quite a lesson for anybody that's listening that's got a business or an entrepreneur, whatever it
Yeah.
may be. It's just staying. And today there's just so many distractions, squirrels,
Yeah.
and staying on task and on track, very, very important.
Yep.
What
Yep.
about rejection? Dealing with rejection, a lot of people struggle with rejection. Did you face a lot of rejection in your music career?
That's a great question. Actually, yeah, and that either will make or break you, I think. So early on in my career, um, like a million of us, had a band, and had my first band, and we played high schools and whatever, and it didn't really amount to much. It didn't really go anywhere. So I decided around the age of 16 I was going to be a songwriter, because that's really what interests me, was the song. So I became the best songwriter I could, and ultimately started playing a lot of different instruments so I could be a self-contained songwriter.
Hmm.
And that really, that time in my life was probably the most important time, because it gave me a sense of discipline, that I have to do this and I have to do this right. So one of the first things that happened when I got into my 20s was getting a publishing deal. So I had now spent years as a writer trying to develop a song catalog that I thought was worthy or good enough to compete with what was going on, in the music business. This is like mid 80s,
Okay.
86, 87. Somehow, through a couple of introductions, I was able to get a fairly high profile publishing deal with Sony. And of course, now you're thrust into a much, much more higher level professional world. You have to come up with X amount of songs per year, in lieu of some payment. So it was a job for me now in my mid 20s,
Hmm.
and I do remember distinctly, like, you put your heart and soul into writing these songs, and they come back and go, yeah, this isn't that great. I think this part of the song could be improved, and this part's great, but this part's not so great. And you go, whoa, I just spent all this time and my heart and soul into this song, and you think it's really special. And it didn't take me long to realize, you know what? These people have been at it a while. They have good ears, and I need to start trusting other people. So it was a great lesson, and it definitely taught me that, like I was saying earlier, that I don't have all the answers. You have to do what you believe in, that you think is right, but at the same time you need to listen and learn, because it's the only way we grow. So that was a good lesson early on, is that the rejection definitely makes you hopefully stronger and better. And
Right.
after that, after getting over that initial feeling, I was like, I embraced it.
Hmm. Mindset for success. That being
Yeah.
open and hearing others that have gone before. Often we
Yep.
struggle with people that have gone before us.
Yes.
I know better. I'm an artist. I got
Yeah.
this. Like, don't you hear it?
Yeah. Well, it's just like, exactly. It's just like, when you're a kid and you do something wrong, and your parents intervene, and people will say your parents know best, your mom knows best, and you go, yeah, whatever. But really, they've lived a lot longer than you, and they usually do have the experience to hopefully guide you in a better way.
So
And
true.
it's the
So
same
true.
thing in life.
Where do I find your catalog of music? Where do our listeners find your catalog of music, Elliot?
Yeah, almost all of it's available on my website,
Okay.
elliotlewis.com. And then,
Awesome.
of course, on YouTube, there's a lot of stuff, and Spotify, and it's all over the place.
Everywhere. The world. All over the world. Love it. Love it. Um, so let's go back and then we can go forward too. But in writing that music and doing
Hmm.
that, what did you have a daily routine that you would follow through to find a successful
Yeah.
day or a successful writing experience?
Yes. So like I said, it puts you on a track to be very disciplined. And this is where the music business comes into play. Because before this, I was just being a creative artist. I was just writing whatever I wanted to write that sounded good.
Mm.
But now, okay, it's a business. I'm getting paid to do this. So you have to approach it as such, set aside some time. And sometimes it's hard to just turn a switch on and be creative. You do need to be in the right frame of mind. You
Hmm.
have to hopefully feel good mentally, physically, to get that out. But I started early on approaching it as a business because I wanted to have longevity in the music business. And one of the first songwriters that I really bonded with was the original bass player from the Average White Band. That's what really led me into being in the band. Now he had been, he was 16 or 17 years older and ahead of me, and already had this great career in the Average White Band, wrote a lot of amazing songs, had commercial success. So I was learning a lot from him. He was a great teacher, a great mentor, as was somebody by the name of Dan Hartman, who wrote a lot of big hits. He wrote a big hit for James Brown. He wrote a hit called Simply the Best for Tina Turner, which I played on. He invited me to play on. So there was a lot of examples of this sort of, okay, this is the music business, you have to approach it as such. It's got to be somewhat, your energy has got to be somewhat disciplined and focused.
That is great advice. Great advice. 3+ decades.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of artists in different spots. What sets the top performers, the top artists apart from all the others? Is it nurture, nature, talent, the underdog mentality? What is the 2 or 3 pieces that makes them so incredible?
For me, I would say a lot of it is originality. I mentioned a couple of people earlier on, David Bowie, Todd Rundgren. They were just trailblazers. Nothing else sounded like that. They were doing stuff that was like the Beatles too. It was uncharted territory. Right. Now so much has come before that it's somewhat harder to create something that sounds so unique and so original. But that was really important to me. Todd Rundgren was a huge influence on me. Now I've worked with him many, many, many times, but he was just so eclectic, and with whatever area, whatever genre he would do, he would just nail it. But he would always, there was no predictability. It was always very unpredictable and very original. So that to me was always the hallmark of a great, true, real artist.
Right. That comes back to being your true self.
Yeah.
True self.
Absolutely.
And so often in life we get pushed and pressed into areas, or we don't want to be seen as vulnerable, so we just kind of go with the flow or do it the same way as everybody else is doing it. And I've often said that in business too, you have to have a different message, a different story. You have to speak different language, even though it might be the same thing. It's a different language. It's a different share. And so that was really, really great. I really appreciate that response, Elliot.
Yeah, and I've worked with so many artists at this point now too, that I get that feeling from a lot of artists, and I try to let that inspire me. Todd Rundgren definitely inspired me. There's been so many moments in my career where I've gone, yes, I get it. They're doing this for the right reason. There was one episode of Live from Daryl's House where Joe Walsh that came on the show, and he at this point he was into his 70s, like Daryl, and had this incredible career, and they're talking business and getting set up for the shoot, and he put his guitar on, and I'll never forget it because he just transformed back into a 14-year-old. It was so obvious, it was like, yes, this guy's doing it for the right reasons, because of the joy and the passion and that original spark. And I just thought that's a great thing.
You just gave me a goosebump experience. That just, to know that you can just transport back into being that child, that 14.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was good. That was good. Thank you. Thank you. Let's move into why this podcast is called Return on Life. And for those, hit your subscribe button. We want you to be here. But we're going to transition to a little bit of the ROL in Elliot's world. And so, Elliot, when we think of Return on Life, balance always comes into it, the career, the life. And I just can only imagine what it's like being on the road as a rock star. Tell us a little bit about that. How do you balance that all out?
Yeah, it does take some balancing. That's a good question. I don't think about it so much in those terms because I've been doing it for so long.
Mm.
But for sure, it does take balance. I'm newly married. So, and my amazing wife knew, of course, what I do and what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So it's understood, but it does take balance. You do have to be conscious of having a balance in your life where you don't. And I tend to usually work too hard. I'm a very hard worker, and sometimes I need to be reminded, you know what? You need a break. You need a reset. You need to recharge. And that's usually almost always true. So it is really important because you can burn out so easily in this business. Being a self-contained artist now, there is no shortage of things to do. I mean, I could literally start working at 8 in the morning and stop at 12 and still feel like I didn't get enough done. It's, now we have to contend with not only our creative output, but all the things that need to go into promoting a show, the marketing, the content that we need. It can be overwhelming. So having balance is really, really important. And I think I've gotten better at it. When I was young, I literally just would work around the clock. Go to bed at 4 or 5 in the morning and get up and just hit it. And, you have to have balance.
Right. And now we have this thing called social media that seems to
Yeah.
take up a bunch of time in our day as well. So,
Yeah.
and I know you're fairly active on social media. So all your listeners out there, if you're looking for a little bit of Elliot, don't be afraid to look for him on social as well.
Yeah.
Definition of success when it comes to return on life and success for you. What is that definition? And I think you've touched on it many times throughout the conversation here, but maybe just if you could kind of bring it into a couple sentences.
Yeah, success now for me has probably a different meaning that it maybe did starting at, well, maybe not so much. All I wanted to accomplish when I was 10 years old and I had this dream of being a musician was really, when we're that young, we're not thinking about money. We're not thinking about money at all. We're just thinking about playing music, having fun. And, and by the time I was 14, I was like, all I want to do is play music and travel the world. That would be it. That's the pinnacle for me. And Lord knows I've done that. So, but at some point, you have to decide if this is going to be a career. You do need to make money at it. So you have to have some business sense and combine all of that. But I would say more than anything, I feel successful just because I've been able to follow this path and do what I love. And this journey has just been incredible. So, and of course, I have an amazing personal life. My wife and family are amazing. So that's all part of the success.
I always say there's two gifts that were given before we're even born, and many of us put those gifts on a shelf. Those two gifts are curiosity and imagination, which are the most craziest, wildest gifts we can have. Now, here I am speaking with you, Elliot, and I'm going, gosh, this man, he still has curiosity. He still has an imagination. He is living about bliss. Bliss is your equilibrium or your passion that you've got. So I really appreciate that.
Imagination is a powerful thing. And that's great that you just said that, because that's really what did it for me, is to imagine myself and imagine this life and never stop dreaming, and I don't. I'm still dreaming and imagining where this whole thing can go.
You still dream, by the way? And do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, literally? You mean nightly dreams? Oh, yeah, I do. I do a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a crazy dream the other night. I was playing a pro golf game, and I golf, but I'm not that great. And it was a contest where if you could stay under par, you got to continue to play with the pros. And lo and behold, it was the 18th hole and I'd won. What an amazing dream that was.
Dreams are very interesting. They're just our subconscious, like putting all this stuff together, and sometimes in random ways that make no sense, but but they can be powerful.
Yes, maybe I'll wake up tomorrow morning with an Elliot dream. I'm dreaming with Elliot.
There have been moments where I've woken up with an idea for a song that I thought, this is the song. This is the
Ah,
song. But then sometimes you don't remember it, or sometimes you remember little snippets of it. Um, I think Todd Rundgren actually, that's how he came up with "Bang on the Drum All Day," which
hmm.
he sort of dismissed as this quirky little thing, but then decided to pursue this musical idea that I believe was a dream, and it was incredibly successful.
Well,
So there's something going on in our subconscious for sure.
oh, the subconscious is incredible. I often say that my conscious cannot outwill my subconscious. The
Yeah.
subconscious is just so strong and doing so many things at once that my
Hmm.
conscious mind can't keep up. But
Yeah.
we have to keep up because that's how we stay grounded. How do you stay
Yeah.
grounded? How do you stay grounded after all these years?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I ever wasn't grounded because my career has happened, I guess, so gradually and in such a, you know, a gradual way that it's impossible to be otherwise for me.
Hmm.
You know, I just feel like I'm so fortunate and so lucky and blessed to, have this idea and this dream and this passion and be able to spend my life doing it.
Yeah.
I wish everybody could experience that.
You know, um, I want to share this. You think that rock and roll artists live long or live hard, live short,
Hmm. Hmm.
all that, and then I see you and I meet you, and you're just full of vibrant energy. You look great. You look young.
Thank
You
you.
act, you move young. Just really appreciates. And I think, gosh, all those years in this thing called rock and roll, and um, I just think you're an amazing individual.
Thank you. Thank you. And I understand what you just said because there's two assets of that. I think music itself can keep you young.
Hmm.
But the lifestyle that a lot of musicians and artists have had to endure is a very tough lifestyle. The traveling, the the commitments, it can wear on you. So it's important to realize that if we're going to adopt this lifestyle, we need to take care of ourselves. And for somehow, I think it was a band that I love called Cheap Trick. And it's all these things that get into our DNA early in
Mhm.
life. And I think I read an article about them, and they said we spend almost 300 nights a year on the road. They just played constantly. But they said we don't party too much and we take our vitamins. And I thought, oh, that's a good thing. So, at 18 years old, I think I was starting to take vitamins and starting to invest in
Hmm.
myself physically and emotionally and mentally that I want to do this thing. And so I got to take care of myself. So, of course, exercising is a big part of that.
And I think that's how we can finish off this section on return on life. Well said,
Yeah.
Elliot. Well said. Well, let's jump into a speed round here. A little bit of
Okay.
speed round, then we can finish it off. So I'm going to ask you a couple music questions since you're into music. So, what is your favorite artist?
Hmm. It's so strange. I don't know if I have a favorite. I have
Actually,
a
can I
group
can I
of,
I'm going to say a
yeah.
known artist that everybody's
Hmm.
going to know, and then the unknown artist that maybe nobody knows that we need to highlight
Hmm.
because you love originality, you love true self.
Hmm. A known artist. Hmm. Again, it's so hard. I love so many artists for so many
Mm,
different reasons and so much different music. I've mentioned a few, but there were so many influential and original artists. David Bowie, of course,
mhm.
Todd Rundgren, um, bands like Cheap Trick. But, I was with Daryl Hall and John Oates for 20 years, and they're brilliant, brilliant songwriters and musicians. I learned a lot from them. Um, there are some there's some unknowns out there. I'm always looking for something to inspire me that's new and contemporary and new. And maybe I don't give myself enough time. I know they're out there. Once in a while I discover them. I don't know if I have any names to give you, but they're definitely out there.
Go and seek and search is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's the difference in the music business now. Is when I was a kid, it was obvious who was out there. Everybody was highlighted. Now there are so many artists that you have to research and spend a little time discovering. But they
Great
are
point.
out there. Yeah.
Great point. We already know the venue, which is your favorite, MSG.
Hmm.
What's the favorite city?
Ooh. Um, Boy, there's a lot, but I would say at the top of the list is Tokyo. I
Tokyo.
love Japan. Yeah, I started playing Japan back in the 90s and have probably been there at least a dozen times now. Played the Budokan Hall, the Budokan Arena, made famous by Cheap Trick.
Hmm.
And it's just an incredible place. But there are a lot. There are a lot of European cities, Italy and France and, Switzerland. And yeah, I've been very lucky to travel the world and see some amazing places.
Okay. Food question.
Yeah.
Takeout, drive through, home cooked meal, or fine dining?
Home cooked meal.
Home cooked meal. I
Home,
thought you'd probably say that.
yeah. But all good given the circumstances.
Yes. Your favorite Hall and Oates song to play?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. The song, there's so many good ones,
Oh,
obviously. Their catalog is so vast a Hall and Oates concert is a concert just full of hit songs. But
yes.
the one that resonates with me is She's Gone. The
She.
very early, yeah, She's Gone, very early song, but it brings me back, Randy, to a time and place when I was 15 years old and I had my first job in a restaurant. I knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So I was like, well, I'm going to start working early so I can afford this guitar or this keyboard or whatever. And I would be in this restaurant working in the back, and She's Gone would be playing just every single night that I was doing my shift. And, of course, there were some other songs that were always accompanied it, but She's Gone was on the radio every night. And so that song brings me back, and it's a great song. It's an incredibly written song. So yeah, I would say that's the one that kind of means the most to me. But there was a lot of fun ones to play.
Oh, when there's so many. Oh my goodness, so many.
Yeah.
So many hits. So many hits. Okay, last question, Elliot.
Okay.
Bit of a trick one. If you were a scratch and sniff sticker, a scratch and sniff sticker, and I scratched your shoulder, what would I smell? What would be the aroma?
I don't know. Hopefully cinnamon.
Okay, cinnamon. So I get all kinds of responses to this. Some say an old book.
Hmm.
Some would say, for me, my wife and I, we love being at the beach. So it's the smell of sea air and a pina
Mm.
colada.
Mm.
Um, Next one says it's leather. They grew up on a ranch and they can
Yeah.
remember, saddling up the horse, and the leather of the saddle. So cinnamon, or do you want to change it?
No, I would. That's the first thing that popped into my mind, and I'll go
Awesome.
with that because
I love it.
I love that.
Uh, Cinnamon it is. Elliot, what a pleasure. What a pleasure to meet you, to listen to you play and sing. It was phenomenal. And now to have you on the podcast, I really, really appreciate you and just all the value that you're bringing our listeners. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Been great talking to you, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you for joining me on the Return to Life podcast. I'm excited that you're here. I need you to hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Comments, reviews, guests that you think should be on this would be so important for us. So we want to hear from you as well. And of course, we're on all the social platforms where we are always discussing everything that is about that ROL, Return on Life.